Hello, everyone. It is 1 o'clock here in Austin, Texas. Happy Halloween Eve to everyone. Welcome to today's webinar sponsored by Harness, the company behind the AI-enabled DevOps platform. And this webinar is hosted by InfoQ that we're going to be moderating today. My name is Srini Pinchikala. I serve as the lead editor for the AI, ML, and data engineering community at InfoQ. It's my pleasure to moderate the webinar today. Today we are going to hear from Eric Minik and Bree Strozowski from Harness team. The presentation title is Architecting the AI-powered IDP, a blueprint for intelligent developer platforms. Let me introduce our presenters first. Excuse me. Eric is a 20-year veteran of the CI/CD and the DevOps space, and he has recently co-authored the book from O'Reilly titled AI Native Software Delivery. Congratulations, Eric, on the book publication.
Thank you.
And Bree is a DevX enthusiast at Harness. She spends her time thinking about what makes both developers and platform engineers successful. Welcome to both of you to this webinar. In this webinar, Eric and Bree will discuss how AI-powered developer portals with intelligent knowledge graphs, automated onboarding, and autonomous CI/CD capabilities, the aspects of end-to-end DevOps supply chain platform, how they can enable the systems that optimize speed, security, and governance. Before we go to the main presentation, I would like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. The presentation will be about 30 to 35 minutes long. And after that, we will have a 15 to 20 minutes Q&A session where the presenters will respond to questions from the audience. I will be moderating the Q&A throughout the presentation. So if you have any questions during the talk, please post them in the questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel. So there is a questions button on top. If you click on that, it will open the questions panel. Everyone's microphones will be muted by default except the speakers. And the recording of this webinar will be available in the next couple of days to watch it offline. You will be receiving an email with more details. That should be all for the housekeeping items. We can get started with the main presentation. Bree and Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you now, and I will turn off my video and mute my microphone. I'm very much looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hello and welcome, everyone. As Rini already said, this is Architecting the AI-powered IDP. So over the last year, we've seen teams experiment with generative AI, developer portals, and self-service platforms. But most of these tools still act like static dashboards that centralize information without really changing how work gets done. So platform teams are being asked to show measurable return on investment, ROI, from AI. And today we're going to show you how we can actually get there. Everything we're going to show you ties back to the Harness platform with the internal developer portal, or IDP, as its interface. And AI makes that interface intelligent. We'll walk you through what we see as the 3 core components that make an IDP truly intelligent and how they tie together as a unified system. So we've already said who we are, right? You know who we are, that's us. Let's start with the basics. Eric, there's some new research out. Do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah. And I think this research is really interesting. So DORA, and if you know DORA metrics, it's that DORA. It's a group out of Google Research. They just released a report called The State of AI-Assisted Software Development. And this came out in September. And it's like 140 pages of goodness. And it showed something really interesting. So they found that AI coding assistants make developers 19% more effective. Sounds really good. And then they ask, well, what about organizations with these developers in it? It's like, well, software development throughput for those organizations goes up by 3%, which is a little bit less than 19. And then they look at the delivery stability, right? Do things crash? Is there a lot of rework going on? And stability goes down by 9% with these AI coding assistants. So there's this like weirdness going on here where like it looks good for the individual, but then when we start zooming out to the team, it's not so good. Yikes.
Yeah. So AI writes code isn't really solving the problem. Like we have developers who feel more productive, but teams who aren't delivering much more. And what they do deliver is breaking things.
Exactly. Like you hear this like, let's move fast and break things. We're not even moving that fast, right? But we are breaking things. We're going about the same speed while breaking things. So yeah, it's not great.
Okay. So this is where things are, people think that they're being more productive, but it's actually slowing things down. Can you dig into what's going on? Like,
yeah, I think this is really going to be the setup for what we're going to need when we start thinking about portals and platforms and all that good stuff. So we should probably start with where developers are spending their time. And Gartner has had a couple good reports, and they're estimating that developers are spending 30-40% of their time on planning and coding activities, and the rest of their time downstream of that. Whether that's testing, securing their code, babysitting deployments, doing optimization, that outer loop of software delivery. And that's really where most of the friction lies, whether that's approvals, scripting, compliance gates, all that stuff that slows stuff down.
So developers are spending more time on delivery than actually developing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably where, we're us as kind of platform engineers and where we're focusing on developer experience. That's where that comes together. And so the problem here really isn't just like efficiency. It's that we're stealing from innovative time. And when we're not doing this well, we're probably shipping bugs, we're shipping security incidents, we're going to be burdening the organization in lots of different ways. And that's just not great.
Okay, so developers are spending a lot more time on delivery and not as much on coding. And there's obviously an imbalance there. So why does this keep happening? Like what's causing all the friction in the delivery process?
Yeah, that's the right question. So if we start looking at where the pain points are, we could start with testing. And I've been in this industry too long, and the number of organizations are like, okay, we're going to go automate our tests now is just crazy. But it's still too manual in our testing cycles. I keep hearing about it being too manual, too inconsistent, too time consuming. When we run our surveys, 40-50% of developers say that they can't release code to production without significant risk of failure. When you turn to ask them about their security practices, most organizations still have separate, fairly siloed security organizations who are responsible for a lot of the scanning. And so they're turning around and delivering back to developers the results of a bunch of scans. And that's a bunch of different spreadsheets. And so the developers then have to look through these spreadsheets with different sets of priorities, different, often overlapping, duplicated sets of findings. Hard to know what's new, what needs to be actioned now, hard to know what to work on. So developers feel like they don't know how to act on this. They're getting interrupted by security issues. And they say they don't have automated security policies kind of baked into their normal workflows. That 40% say it's not really governed and baked into their pipelines. And when we look at kind of deploying things through the pipeline, it's still not as automated as it could be. And where it is automated, there's a lot of scripts involved, right? So there's a lot of effort put into writing scripts, maintaining scripts. Whenever anything changes, you have to go into all of your scripts and update that. And the result of this is release cadences are still too slow. right? So when we say 60% are slow, what we're seeing is that 60% are saying that they're releasing on a monthly or quarterly cadence.
Okay.
When we know that elite organizations are releasing multiple times a day, and if you're pretty good at DevOps, you're releasing weekly or multiple times a week at least.
Yeah.
Right. You can do a lot better than monthly at this point.
Yeah.
Quarterly is like some 1990s stuff. And then on the inefficiencies, there's inefficiencies everywhere. If you're piling up and doing a quarterly release, like there's a lot of inventory to manage. But the classic example right now is cloud costs.
Okay.
This like 20-25% annual increase in cloud cost is really normal across the industry. We're leaving things running all over the place. It's really sloppy. And in addition to just being like wasteful, it's terrible for the environment too. So, it's just bad for everybody in every way.
Yeah, definitely. And so like, that's the outer loop of, not being optimized or efficient. And these are exactly like the kind of pain points that platforms were supposed to solve, right? They were supposed to fix those, but most of them, and when we go back to IDPs, those are portals that just give you information. They don't actually do anything, right? And now AI is making things more complicated, maybe worse. We're generating code faster than ever, but delivery is clearly not catching up. Can you show us with that, like with the data, is there more data on this that like talks about it? Or
yeah. So when we think about like where we started with that, like developers are saying, well, I'm 19% more effective, or I'm able to generate code more than I was before. And then we're seeing that the organizations aren't actually getting a lot more out the door, or if they are, it's less stable. Well, this actually starts making sense, right? Where we've got these great coding assistants, right? We've got Copilot and Windsurf and all of these wonderful tools. Well, they're helping me write my code.
Yeah.
But if we haven't optimized everything downstream, right, it's just trying to shove things through the same size straw. And what we're feeling is that straw like cracking and breaking, and you just can't really get much more through it unless you fundamentally change that straw. So the coding assistant might let me make 2 times as much stuff, 4 times as much stuff, and we're only seeing a 20% improvement for the developer. That's probably because they're spending more of their time downstream, right? It's going from 30% coding time to 20% coding time to 10% coding time. It's like that percentage that we are already not happy with is getting worse. So this is a bad situation. It feels like it's getting worse. This feels like it's crumbling. So the end-to-end systems are breaking.
Yeah. So basically, like there was always kind of this problem, right? Like with coding, and then it has to go through delivery. But now there's so much more coding due to AI assistance, but without better delivery, that means higher costs, more waste, more things breaking, and AI is making the platform reliably critical. So there's got to be good news here, though. Is there a way forward? Is there something that can help this? Like,
yeah. I mean, what we're starting to see is that organizations with strong, mature platforms actually see AI improve performance. So that's something we could dig into next.
Okay. Cool. So let's do that. The problem has been made abundantly clear. So let's start thinking about what actually works and why platform quality is important.
We should start moving towards solutions. All right, let's move towards solutions. All right. So we can go back to the same DORA report where we saw that 1939 number.
Okay.
And like way down in the second half, they've got this terrible graphic. But when you look at it long enough, you start to understand it.
Okay.
They've got this correlation between how people talk about the quality of their platform and whether there's a positive impact on organizational performance or not. So whether you were in that 3%, right, or whether you didn't have that benefit. So if you were above average in the quality of your developer platform, then AI improved your organizational performance. If you were below average, you didn't get the benefit. And at Harness, we ran our own surveys over the summer, and we actually found a similar, or at least a related result. We found that teams who were above average in their continuous delivery practices were twice as likely as those who were below average to tell us that they were finding benefits from AI and how often they were delivering to production. Okay. So it seems like how good you are at DevOps stuff is predictive of whether you're able to get benefits from AI coding in whether you're actually able to ship software out the door. Now we're getting that from multiple organizations, both from a vendor like us who's a little more maybe selfish in what we're looking for in the result, even though our surveys were legitimate, as well as a more scientifically rigorous organization like Dora was.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like, you know, if you have a good platform, like good things should happen, right? Including adding new technologies like AI. Is this the ugly graphic you were talking about? Because it's really not pretty to look at, but.
Okay. I found it confusing. I drew the arrows on top, and maybe that
helps for sure. All right, so the message is basically AI alone won't transform your engineering organization, right? So AI on top of the strong platform, though, can definitely help. It does, according to this data and what Harness has also looked at. So platform quality is that's the multiplier. It decides whether IA is going to make things better or worse. And if platform maturity is what makes AI better, the question becomes like, how does something like a portal evolve to support that? Like, what does the architecture actually look like?
Exactly. And so I think what we're seeing is intuitively, if you take more code and you shove it through the same straw, that's not going to work. So we need to make our platform better in order to balance this out, right? And the data from multiple sources bears this out. If we've got a platform that's able to keep up with our better coding assistants, we're going to get the benefits. If we don't have a platform that can keep up, we're not going to get the benefits.
Makes sense.
And to a degree, the better our platform, the more benefits we're going to get.
Okay.
Is also what we see here.
Yeah.
So how does this actually work? Well, you need a platform, right? And before you can add AI, that platform needs to have this solid foundation with reusable pipelines, templates, governance, and it's got to be able to provide your developers with the things it needs. And that platform, what do we mean by that? Well, it needs to be able to provide your developers with CI/CD pipelines, infrastructure automation, service catalog, observability hooks, probably cloud cost management if you care about that efficiency. Underpin this all with role-based access control. And then you want to front that with a portal to give a consistent, good developer experience with access to all of that. And a really key element of this is that you can't just copy and paste scripts underneath all of that for a few of these services. Like, that doesn't scale. You need to make sure that when your portal provisions something, it's got to have a nice shared baseline so that when you need to make changes, you're making changes to that shared baseline and everybody gets those updates rather than you make a change in one place and suddenly you need to go through some sort of campaign to get everybody to make updates. So there's a lot of work to do to put together these platforms, but you need this kind of stuff in order to scale AI for your organization.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's basically sound like reusable patterns, right, are the foundation for intelligence AI. And the more standardized your components are, the smarter and better your automation becomes. And really, AI can only predictably work with what's repeatable. So once you have that foundation, the next step is probably helping AI understand your system and like how it connects, right? So how does that work? Like how would you make that work in a platform fronted by a portal?
Sure, right. And I think that understanding is where a knowledge graph comes in, and that's a semantic layer that connects meaning across your platform with all your other tools, right? So for us, that's harness out to tools like Jira and GitHub, cloud providers, monitoring systems. So that all these concepts are linked, right? So that your issues are linked to the code that satisfies the issues and the build that comes out of that code to the artifact that's produced by the build, so the deployment of that artifact and the test of that deployment in an environment, right? And so on and so on. And this is why the platform needs access to all the tools to understand how everything relates. And that's what lets you ask things like, trace this code change to a cost spike, or which commits caused last week's deployment failure. And without a unified graph, AI is guessing, or it's trying to assemble these relationships itself with every query, which is slow and expensive.
Okay. And that's where you're getting like, untrustworthy answers, right? If it's not having that knowledge graph where things are tied together. And so the knowledge graph is what makes finding stuff intelligent instead of just, searchable and guesswork. So it helps AI understand your system. And, answering the questions is good. It's one part of this, right? But taking action seems like it's, probably the next logical and better step. So how does AI within this platform, especially move from understanding to actually doing things?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, it's great to be able to answer the questions, right? So we pointed out questions like what commits are linked to last week's failed deployments. But as you get into self-service actions, like that same AI can let you do something. So if you know that you had some sort of a failed deployment, you might then say, well, what kind of additional testing would have let me catch that? Create that test for me, whether that's a resilience test, a chaos engineering test, or a functional test, right? You can get help creating tests. Now the AI is more practical in helping you take action and protecting you for next time. And that's where you're able to be a lot more action oriented.
Okay. So developers can see what they need, and then a smart platform can make that happen. But that's the difference between answering questions and taking action. So it sounds like there is a third piece here that might tie this all together. So like once you make that database, provision it, and onboard a service, you also need to verify it, right? With things like deployment health checks, cost forecasting, resilience testing, all that. All that needs to happen automatically with fast feedback and not manual tickets, ideally, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that third pillar, making sure that those core pipelines, your CI/CD is good and autonomous. And the knowledge graph supports you there too, right? Okay. So AI workflows help give you orchestration. And autonomous CI/CD helps make it safe, governable, continuously optimized. So when a developer says deploy this, the platform doesn't just put the bits out there, it verifies it, tests it, scans it, keeps the costs in check, and feeds those results back into the knowledge graph to help support the next decision. And that's the closed loop that really makes intelligent automation possible.
All right. Okay, that makes sense. So you've talked about the foundation, the knowledge graph, some AI workflows, and autonomous CI/CD as kind of that third pillar. So how do you tie that all together? Like, what is it? I know we're going to talk about portals. So how would something like a portal tie this together and evolve to be from basic to more intelligent?
I think that's really key because portals are where you're going to get started.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, we know why portals matter in the first place. If you don't, IDPs are there because developers basically need two things. They need to find things and they need to get things done, right? So that's what a portal should do, make it easy to find what you need and do then what you need to do. But a lot of portals fall short because they stop at showing information without connecting to that action. And that's why portals should evolve. So can you kind of walk us through like the stages of this and how you see things are evolving right now and what's happening in the state of portals, internal developer portals?
Yeah, and keep me honest here, because I know you've probably spent more time on portals than me. So
Fair.
keep me honest. So I think when we're starting with a static IDP, right, the developers can definitely find things, right? So we've got a service catalog where I've registered all of my stuff. I've got documentation out there. I've probably got some templates. I've got example code. They probably can't get a lot done. So I have to leave my portal and go into tools and figure out workflows for themselves. And I've got a useful reference library, but not really a workbench, right? I've got an overgrown wiki, if I'm going to be harsh to it. And I want to move into like an automated IDP where I've got the strong automation really built in. And there's golden paths for onboarding, self-service actions, CI/CD is really nicely integrated, and that's a lot better, right?
Yeah.
But like it's still fairly reactive. Like the developer needs to know really what they're looking for,
right.
And like go find this thing. And the portal can't really help them make decisions aside from having good documentation about itself. Intelligence is where you get this more natural language experience where the developer can come in and say, here, like, here's what I need to do. Like, I want to create this service with this criteria, right? I want, this basic service. I need authentication of this type. I need a database on the back end. And then the portal knows enough about my organization. It knows enough about our standards. It knows enough about the workflows that are available that it can then ask additional information about what I need, and then it can then provide information back to the developer and then go do work for me, right? So it can go and spin up the right sorts of repos with the boilerplate code. It can create all the pipelines for me that meet the standards of my organization with my policies, that use the right existing services, use the right boilerplate code, and stitch it together to my requirements as an engineer. So I think that's really where it's going. And that brings together an understanding of what I need with an understanding of the organization, with an understanding of the tool set and the of what we've got going on. So we've got this AI-driven workflow where the portal interprets what I mean, makes it easy to get things done, ties in the autonomous CI/CD, so it's nice and safe and governable. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Like I think, it's a lot of understanding, understanding
the
tools, understanding the systems, all of that. And that's like the golden path of where we want to get to for IDPs. And right now at Harness with our IDP, like what we have is like the knowledge assistant. It's kind of the voice of the platform. We're trying to get there and help do things in natural language. But I think what's important that I would want to add is that like the portal isn't the platform itself, right? The IDP is the interface, and the platform, your CI/CD, security, infrastructure, cost management is the engine behind it. But the portal then for developers really makes that engine accessible and intelligent.
Yeah, and I think that's tricky because we've got the two different IDPs, right? Like there's the internal development portal and the internal developer platform.
Yeah.
And the portal is the front door to the platform.
Got it.
And yeah, you want both of those things. So yeah, so I mean, you want the portal to understand your world, have the automation available, connected into the platform,
Mm-hmm.
and be in a place where, I as an engineer can ask it questions, it understands it, the right stuff happens. And I move from filing tickets, waiting a week for some engineer to pick it up and do work for me. And then I have to file more tickets to get it right, to I ask a question and the portal sets it up. And I'm often creating my new service, because that's the unlock, right? Is I can now create a new service. I can write the code really, really easily.
Yeah.
That part's free.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting free with
But
these AI coding assistants. But I need pipelines. I need all of the infrastructure set up. I need my tests harnesses to be in place. I need my security scans to be in place. I need all of that other stuff to be in place in order for me to be able to deliver that in a nice, safe, consistent way.
yeah, you need that out loop. It's important. Yeah.
Or else it's never going to get out the door.
Exactly.
Right. And I think one of the challenges that we've seen, I was at a dinner with a bunch of engineering leaders a couple weeks ago. And like 3 of them had the same problem in the last few weeks, which was they had some VP off in the business vibe code up an app and say, okay, how do I put this in production?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you do that safely?
That's the easy part, is the vibe code. Yeah, the hard part is putting it in production.
Has that person taking the secure coding practices class that you've promised all of your customers? That no, they haven't. They're not a developer.
Yeah.
So you've got to, I think, build all of this infrastructure to meet the challenge of a VP in the business has vibe coded up an app.
Yeah. Okay.
How do we do this safely?
Yeah.
That's the new bar.
Exactly. I was gonna say that's the new litmus test there.
Yeah, that's the new litmus test, and I think that's where we go. So like the citizen developer that we've been threatened with or promised, however you want to look at it, for the last 10 years, like has suddenly arrived, and it's arrived not with a low code system, but with a vibe coding system, and we've got to figure out how we do this in a safe way, because that citizen developer has come with a VP title, and it's hard to say no to.
Makes sense. And I mean, I think that's where, why the platform quality is the most important thing. And yeah, we can move I know we can do the recap now if you want. Moving on to like that. Well, no, I'm just saying, like, because like I was going to talk about the fact that the platform is important because of the vibe coding VP. So, I think the 3 things that we covered that go back to that, litmus test is that, the delivery crisis, we went over that. It's here already. As Eric has shown, there's tools creating a lot more code, but delivery is not catching up. So people are spending 60 to 70% of the time on testing, securing, deploying, and not coding. And it's a big imbalance that's probably going to get worse. And unless, what we were just talking about, the platform quality determines, whether AI is going to help you or hurt you. The DORA data is clear, other data is clear, just, our fields that people that are out there, organizations with mature and automated platforms are seeing AI speed up both throughput and stability, not just, the coding side of it. So, but teams with disconnected tools are seeing the complete opposite, where AI is kind of amplifying whatever finish you've built right now. And that quality score chart really showed this. Last point is that intelligent IDPs, internal developer portals, are going to helpfully bridge that gap. And static portals, they let you find things, but automated portals are what let you do things. And finally, the third evolution there is intelligent IDPs that will understand what you mean and run entire workflows, provision your infrastructure, take care of all of that thing, all the things that happen after the VP vibe coder hands off his app to you. So that's the difference between a dashboard and a teammate, and it's powered by the three components that we talked about, like the knowledge graph, AI workflows, and the autonomous CI/CD.
Right. And I mean, that's what helps you scale with AI generated code, right? Your platform's either helping you close the gap or it's your bottleneck, and you got to know where you're sitting.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's all that we had for now, but do you want to take us into Q&A, or is Srini going to jump on?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Bree. Excellent presentation. I loved the inquiry-based conversation, right? So I really like how you kind of made the case. And also thanks for the clarification between the developer portals and the development and deployment platforms. I think that that makes a lot of sense. So for our audience, please post your questions in the questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel. So as you kind of guys take time to post the questions, I do have a couple of questions I want to start with, Bree and Eric. So I think that knowledge graph is very powerful. So how do the teams go about it? How do they create it? Who is the owner of it? And how do they maintain it? In the long term.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm seeing that as a big investment area for vendors, frankly. So otherwise, it's basically a BI project. So you can create it yourself, but it's a significant kind of machine learning BI project to create that topology, right? And layer that in, and then put that as a query layer, basically a RAG layer for an AI system that you would put on top. So what your knowledge graph is essentially becoming a significant competition layer for in the vendor space. But hey, we're all technologists. We can all build it ourselves if we hate ourselves enough.
Yeah, sometimes reinventing the wheel is not the best solution, right? So whether it's created in house or using a tool like Harness, right? So who do you see owning that knowledge graph? Is it like application teams or infrastructure or DevOps or some combination of these three groups?
Yeah, I think where this is going to sit, I mean, we're really talking about who owns the platform, who owns the portal, right, at this point. And so that's going to be probably a platform team. And then if you don't have that, it's going to be the central DevOps team, in all likelihood. And then that sort of team tends to either be under a application organization or an infrastructure organization in most groups, I think. Bree, what do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's a shared model, right? You can't say that one person owns it because people are going to get different uses out of it. But, yeah, I mean, for the most part, platform engineering, I would say, like you said, either DevOps, but, infra teams, but, everyone's developers also have a stake in it because they're going to be getting use out of it. So it's a shared model, I'd say.
I mean, they're the primary customer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, with all the power it can bring, there is so much you can do, right? Not only for the software delivery, but also other areas where the optimization can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we do have some questions coming in, so let me jump to those, and we can come back to other questions that I have on my list. So Warwick is asking, does the knowledge that provides context for AI-powered IDP need to be a graph, Can you please give some examples? I think they're asking is that does it need to be a graph type of data type, or can we use some kind of a document or?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways of doing it that are probably helpful. Where we've seen the power of graph, and why we see, at least in the vendor space, so many people moving towards graph, particularly as we look at the DevOps space, is that so many of the interesting questions have to traverse many kind of domains and relationships. So I think one of the examples we gave was something like, did I make a code change that impacted cost, right? So to do that, you have to look at like cost telemetry coming out of like AWS, right? Or Azure or whatever. So you've got to understand that, and that's going to be very infrastructure centric, and you got to understand cloud and infrastructure. And then you've got to map your infrastructure telemetry, your cost out of that, to some logical concept of an environment. And then that environment then needs to be mapped to some logical application that then has a production, right? Probably, or dev, right? It has to have that semantic relationship, which then needs to have then been deployed to, right? And that's a CI concept, and we're no longer an infrastructure concept, CI concept. And what was deployed to was a build, right? An artifact that was deployed. So now we've got concepts coming out of an artifact registry or a CI/CD system, a build. That build came from a CI system, which may or may not be the same as your CD system, depending on what tools you're using. And then what went into your build was some commits. And there's some series of commits that came in over time, probably since the previous build that went into that environment. You got to roll those up. And so you're going over all of these different tools to traverse it back, right? And that's a very graphy kind of thing, to have entities and relationships between entities. And so to have that sort of semantics is why you see people going towards graph.
Yeah.
That was a long explanation, but that's that's why it's happening as graph.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, most portals start as catalogs, right? Just a list of services and pipelines, environments, and all that. But the knowledge graph just will then turn that into a living map that shows those relations and gets you like that much further. So,
and it's going to be both things, right? So there's going to be understanding how cost relates to code semantically is a graphy relationship.
yeah.
Understanding what was in a commit is going to be more of a text relationship of understanding what's in the code, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's in the commit comment. Understanding what the application is about might be reading the documentation of the application.
Yeah.
So there's docs and plain text that needs to be consumed, but also from a relationship point of view, there's graphy stuff.
I'm blank. I like graphy relationships. I'm going to start using that.
I use very precise language.
Graphy.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Also, Warwick mentioned is graph suggested because it's more like a mind map, right? That makes sense because of the connectedness of the graph structure, and the speed and accuracy and the optimization, is out there, right? So out of the box. So if you have to go read a bunch of documents and then make sense out of it, it will take more time, right?
Yeah, and the AI an AI system will try to infer this by itself if it's well tuned, right? It can try to figure out these relationships, and it may be able to do it, but it's very expensive.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I guess the other question would be, so maybe I think you mentioned this in the presentation, but are there any other specific examples you can highlight where this approach or using this tool made a big difference in terms of the time to market or the cost savings in terms of onboarding or deployment or any of these aspects?
Yeah, I mean, the one that's top of mind for me, just kind of AI and DevOps right now. And I think in a real world like this it's still early days, right? For AI and DevOps. Just saw one of our customers, National Australia Bank, posting on LinkedIn the last 48 hours. But they're using capabilities to figure out, like, when I deploy to production, have I caused problems, right? So that I know whether I should roll back, right? Really simple. So that is, I deploy to production, and then I immediately start checking telemetry for that same service, whether that's logs, metrics coming out of observability platforms, et cetera. So a couple of those tools, I check that against baselines, use some machine learning there, and if that's looking bad, I either initiate a rollback automatically, or I contact an engineer and say, this doesn't look good. Do you think we should initiate a rollback? And so instead of that scenario where we either wait for an alert and then roll back, it's just not great, or I deploy and then I have people staring at observability telemetry, which is not fun. I don't know if anyone else has done that, but watching telemetry is not the best. Well, it might be the best use of time, but it's not the most enjoyable use of time. We let the AI take that worst part of your job of staring at the telemetry for you. So that sort of thing, I think, is really natural, of just connecting, right? What's going on with the deployment? What's going on in various observability tools? And how did it go well or not? Let's roll back if not. And that just to lower the risk of deployment, make it safe. And if something is safe and cheap, then we do it more often. We get to production more often. And I think that's very simple and very well proven. And it was great to see them talking about that socially. So
definitely, I was going to mention NAB as well, but that goes back to the repeatability that you were talking about in the presentation. So
yes, okay. So we have another question. So speaking of pain points are not fun things to do for app teams. So we have production runbooks, and then there are the release notes and broadcasting about the new versions to the stakeholders. So the question from Warwick again is, can an intelligent IDP assist with operations, taking the runbook authoring away from the developers? So because do they still have to write the runbooks from scratch, or can this tool somehow automate those tasks as
well? It depends on what the runbook is, but I think should be able to. And then I don't know, Bree, what do you think on this one?
I mean, I think traditional runbooks they're pretty static and manual, right? So I feel like there's got to be a way to do some like an intelligent IDP theoretically could auto-generate a first draft of a runbook by analyzing like existing workflows and the past incidents, but it can look at like kind of that historical data and playbook. So I think at least instead of starting from scratch, teams are reviewing and retaining, some AI generated content there because it has that context. What does that make?
At least the tools can provide the first draft, right? So
yeah, I would think so.
And probably as an output, or I'm thinking about the ARSRE sorts of capabilities too, right? At the end of an incident, right?
Yeah.
What should I change in my runbooks?
Right, yeah.
Right. Based on what we've learned in this incident, here's my runbook. What should we do differently? Right. How do I update this?
Yeah.
Right? That's a supernatural thing to do. And then if we have our 100th service that looks the same as the other ones. Let's copy and paste those things, right? Or let's all refer to the same. Here's our standard runbook for service type X. So instead of copy and paste, which I hate, like let's all refer back to standard runbook for this kind of service deployed to Kubernetes. And now I've got one thing to maintain. So when I have an incident on one of them and I update the runbook, then the others don't have to have that incident to get the improved knowledge.
Yeah, so they'll kind of refine themselves based on like real data that's happening in the runbooks.
Makes sense. I think one of my questions, Brian, is like, what are the challenges? AI is very powerful. I think I definitely agree with you both that AI has a lot to offer in the DevOps space, because development is, especially Brie, as you mentioned, it's now the tools can generate the code, but the main a lot of time goes into supporting the apps, right? And the AI can help that there, right? But what do you see as challenges in terms of integrating AI into the DevOps space? From a practical standpoint, like it cannot be all happy path, right? So. Any challenges from what you've seen with the clients or other organizations?
Sure. Bree, do you want to start, or?
I mean, I think like if I'm understanding correctly, like, just putting it on a human level as anything with this, like trust and transparency are some of the biggest challenges. Understanding why AI is making a suggestion or taking an action, and being able to trust that, I think is, a big key to adoption and putting that cultural piece in place. But I don't know if that's what you were asking or not. Okay.
That's what I'm asking. Like, what are the challenges in terms of the process, culture, and tools, right? So.
Yeah.
I mean, especially as you're touching production, as you're changing production, you're trusting something to change production, you need really good audit trails. You're going to need good agreements with whoever's providing that AI. You're going to probably need your legal team to review agreements and stuff. Like all of that's super normal. You need to have good, trustworthy agreements with your vendor. And then, a healthy dose of paranoia, I think is good. Checking things like, we look at things like, oh, it'll help me with my testing. Great. I've seen all sorts of like, oh, we're going to generate tests from your code. Great. You will validate that your code does what your code does. Does that mean it does what it was supposed to do? Or does it just mean that it does what it's supposed to do? Or what you wrote? And I think you got to ask those questions. And I think, one of the things that I'm really happy with is we've started to, with some of our functional testing tools that we offer, copy and paste from the Jira ticket into the functional testing tool and say, let's generate the functional test based on the ticket, not based on the code. Great, right? That's probably a little closer to what the product manager, hopefully the user, actually wanted. And if that's not what the code does, then that's interesting. So that I find interesting. Like, you don't want, like, let's trust the developer a little bit less, because that's why we do testing, is to find out when these things deviate. So yeah, I think some of the, like, we're getting into autofix stuff, watching that autofix like a hawk, and making sure it's not bringing the test into compliance with the code, but the code into compliance with the requirement is really, really important right now. That's where I would be paranoid.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. The test should be validating the code against the requirements, not validating the code against the code, right? So
yeah.
So there's one more question. This is an interesting question. So I'll read it. Incident root cause analysis, RCA, that Eric mentioned is a great point. You mentioned about RCA, right? So the question is, can intelligent IDP assist with RCA? How far could it go? Are there practical limitations? So can we use this type of approach for forensics or troubleshooting or root cause analysis efforts?
Yeah, I mean, we're finding some success with that, certainly. And I think this is one of the first things all the DevOps vendors are adding, AI-wise, has been, I will parse your build and deploy error logs and try to make the error make sense. So like that level of really basic RCA has been something that we've all done first. I mentioned the like verification scenario. We're also like one of the places where we're investing there is, okay, so we decide, oh, we should roll back because the metrics are wonky. Great. That's also hard to explain, like why we rolled back. So putting more effort through the LLMs to then explain in human terms why we rolled back. This service had latency of this type that's abnormal in this way, so we rolled back. Takes important steps towards RCA. And then you start tying that back to code changes. And we're making even more progress. So to greater and lesser extent, I think there's really important work towards RCA. From marketing points of view, I think you're seeing grand promises. Some of that is very real, and some of that is hopes and dreams. But there is some real stuff going on in RCA.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when something breaks, the portal has that context to trace what changed and what was impacted, who owns it, kind of gives you everything ideally, like, well, instead of digging through 5 tools, you get the context right there, right? At least it can do that much.
Yeah, and as knowledge graphs get better, as the tools get more and more integrated, as the AIs get better, like all of this RCA is going to get much sharper. Like one of the things we're doing with our AI SRE product, which is in beta right now, early release somewhere in there, like is we're combining information coming out of the tooling telemetry with having it sit on the Zoom or Teams call with you and listen to what you're saying and get the information coming from the engineers as they're doing their own research. And it's trying to bring together all of that information and say, okay, we've got this information coming out of the tools, this information coming from people who are maybe calling your vendors, and with all of that coming together, I think that it's this with a 40% confidence level, right? And bringing that into a traceable, auditable look.
Yep, makes sense. So those are the questions from audience. We're almost out of time as well. We can start wrapping up. This has been a very informative session. Thanks for your time with not only the main presentation, but also very detailed Q&A. I want to thank again everyone who has attended this webinar and for submitting your questions. And for any of those interesting use cases like RCA, please, you can reach out to the Harness team offline to get more details. Again, attendees, again, you are the main reason why we host these events. We want to share with the developer community the innovations happening in the software development and deployment world, and learn from practitioners and the technology leaders like Eric and Bree. So Eric and Bree, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I just want to thank everyone for awesome questions. That was got me thinking even more. That was fantastic. So thanks for joining, and thanks for the great questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks Srini. It was really nice to be here today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bree. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, that's the webinar for today. Thanks, everybody. We will talk to you next time. Thank you.
Right.
Have a great day.